Bible Worm, reading the Bible with Bible Worm.
Welcome to Bible Worm, getting to the core of the biblical text. I'm Dr. Amy Robertson, Director of Lifelong Learning and Music at Congregation Or Hadash in Sandy Springs, Georgia.
And I'm Dr. Robert Williamson, Professor of Religious Studies at Hendrix College and Theologian in Residence of Canvas Community in Little Rock, Arkansas. We're here every week to discuss the biblical text, both as biblical scholars and as people of faith, one Jewish and one Christian.
For this third week of Advent and our last week in the Hebrew Scriptures, we are reading the gorgeous words of Isaiah chapter 55. This text starts us out in these bodies we've been given, these bodies that need food and water and joy and God. Why do we consume so many things that don't fill us up? How have things gone so haywire? What if we could just trust that there is a much bigger system we are being invited into, where our lives have meaning both alone and intertwined? And what if there's a pathway to that way of being, coming up just ahead on the right? Would you take it? Can we trust it? Thanks for being with us. Hey, Bobby, how are ya?
Hey, Amy, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great, although I feel some premature sadness, longing. I don't know. It is our last reading in the Hebrew Scripture for this official season of narrative lectionary, and I just feel, and I feel that.
Yeah, it comes quick. It seems like every year. I mean, it comes exactly the same every year, but
it does.
It always
it does.
It always feels a little quick. We're the third Sunday of Advent in the Christian tradition. Next week, we are moving on to the Gospel of John, where we will be until Easter, and then we'll be in Acts and Philippians until Pentecost. So it really is a very long time. It feels different. Like the podcast does feel different to me when we're in our shared texts in the fall in the Hebrew Scriptures.
Yeah,
I love reading New Testament texts with you also, but I really love reading texts where these are your texts that live in your life and in your community.
Yeah.
So we should relish this moment.
We should relish it. We're going to relish today. And we have a really beautiful text today for our relishing.
Yes, it's such a good one.
It's a really good one. Isaiah chapter 55. It's verses 1 through 13, which is all of chapter 55.
Right.
We have read some from Isaiah before during this season, but as you well know, Isaiah is a complicated book. So I wonder if there is some orientation you'd want to offer us as we move into this chapter in particular.
Yeah, as you're saying, the compositional history of the book of Isaiah is quite complicated. In the book of Isaiah, we have some oracles that come from the 8th century, as we were talking about a few weeks ago, around the time of Ahaz and the Assyrian incursion into the northern kingdom. And then we have oracles that relate to the exile. And then we have oracles that seem to be about post-exilic Judah. And so there's a couple of ways of thinking about how these came together. One is that you had a prophet who was prophesying about things that happened 200 years after he lived. Another, more kind of accepted in the scholarly community, is that you have 2 or maybe 3 different prophets who are in the same kind of line of prophecy. They belong to some kind of Isaiah school of prophecy. And so you have Isaiah ben Amoz, the original Isaiah, prophesying in the 8th century, and then one of his later followers prophesying in the exile, and then a third one after the exile. And so that's kind of the way that I tend to think about it. Scholars, call those guys like 2nd and 3rd Isaiah, or Deutero and Trito Isaiah.
Yeah.
The prophet that we're reading today is generally understood as the one who is writing from the exile, 2nd Isaiah or Deutero Isaiah, whose writing extends more or less from Isaiah 40 to 55. And so this prophet is speaking to a community that has been in the exile. He seems to be writing right at the tail end of the exile as Cyrus the Persian king is coming onto the scene, who's going to be the one who defeats the Babylonians and releases the Israelites from exile and allows them to return to the land. So we have moved about 50 years or so from where we were last time in Ezekiel, who was writing right at the beginning of the exile. Now we are, like 2 generations later. The people have been out of the land for half a century and now just breaking onto the historical scene. You can see the exile coming to an end. And so Second Isaiah is this really beautiful book of hopeful prophecies. We have survived the depths of the exile, and there is a rebuilding that is coming. And so some of the most lovely, inspiring texts of all the Bible are here in this chapter, including Isaiah 55.
Yeah.
Are there things you would want to say differently or other than that?
No, I think you just said that perfectly. And that last sort of image you put in my mind is so evocative. It's like you're not out of it yet, but you can see it.
Right.
You could there is an end in sight. And in some ways that moment can be more uplifting than the moment that you're actually at the end, when it's coming. You just got to get a little bit further down that road. Yeah. Great. Well, I think we're ready to jump in. You ready?
Let's get into it.
So we're in Isaiah chapter 55. I'm reading from the NJPS. Ho, all who are thirsty, come for water. Even if you have no money, come buy food and eat. Buy food without money, wine and milk without cost. Why do you spend money for what is not bread, your earnings for what does not satisfy? Give heed to me, and you shall eat choice food and enjoy the richest viands. Is that how you say that word?
I don't know what that word is. It reminds me of Vienna sausages. Did you ever eat those?
I'm just going to say the richest Vienna sausages. Okay. Incline your ear and come to me. Hearken, and you shall be revived. And I will make with you an everlasting covenant, the enduring loyalty promised to David. As I made him a leader of peoples, a prince and commander of peoples, so you shall summon a nation you did not know. A nation that did not know you shall come running to you for the sake of the eternal your God, the Holy One of Israel, who has glorified you. So we start out with this really immediately sort of interesting and evocative imagery, metaphor, playing around thirst and water and then food and hunger. Before we move into the metaphorical part of it, what is it about thirst and water? Like what would you say about someone who is thirsty being able to come for water? Like what does that draw up in you?
I mean, to me, obviously food and water are like basic needs of what it means to be human. You need sustenance for your body and you need to quench your thirst. And, before you move into a metaphor or, some scholars will argue about whether we should read these as spiritual realities or as material realities. But if you just hang with the material reality for a minute, what you seem to have here is people who are hungry and people who are thirsty, but they are living in an economy in which those things are controlled by whether or not you can pay for them. So you have an empire, Babylon, or however you want to think about it, that is controlling access to fundamental human needs for those who can afford it. Like this sounds kind of familiar when you say it that way. Yeah. And here we have the prophet saying that is no longer the way it's going to be. Everybody gets to eat. Everybody gets to drink. You can sustain your body. You can quench your thirst. And it doesn't matter if you have money or not. This is not about the transaction of it. This is about the provision of food for people. It harkens me back to some texts we've read, most famously the manna in the wilderness, but also that story of Elijah in 1 Kings 19 that we read, where the angel just shows up with bread and water. And so this idea that there is the possibility of food and sustenance that is offered without any expectation of pay. We've seen it all along, and here it is as an invitation to people who have been through some stuff
Yeah.
where their labor has been on behalf of someone else.
Yeah.
What do you see when you look at that?
I mean, I think very similar to what you see. And I think maybe even in particular, I would start with the beginning being like, thirsty, come for water.
Mm-hmm.
That's just like the basic of the basic.
Yes.
And we are made this way. We are made to need water. Living creatures are made to need water.
Yes.
There's nothing indulgent about it.
Yes.
And yet, if it's not available to you, it's just the most, I mean, I don't know how to describe thirst other than, I don't know how to describe thirst. That's why I think it's such a powerful metaphor. You can just, if you let your body feel it for a moment before you move on in the reading, then you can understand it, because this is how we're made.
That's so helpful to me, Amy. And I mean, it's true just elementally that you can survive for, I don't know, like 40 days without eating, maybe at the outside, but I don't know exactly how long you can survive without water, but it's not long. And you were also reminding me of a series we did 2 summers ago on creation texts. And one of the things we noticed in the creation text is it's always water that comes first, and then everything else comes from there. And so there's something really resonant about this recreation text. Like, we're going to make something new in the midst of the old, and that water is the first thing that is necessary. That's really nice.
Yeah. Bobby, I love that image you painted of, this new world being envisioned where you don't need money to be able to buy food. And I wonder why you think the text retains this sort of language of commerce. Like, why doesn't it just say, all who are thirsty, come and drink, all who are hungry, come and eat? It feels particularly pointed that it
does.
Maybe it is specifically a critique of that system. Is that how you see that?
That's the way I read it, that if you were living in God's economy, these things would not be gated by financial restrictions. And so when you have to say, you don't need to be limited by your finances, it's because you're living in a world that limits you by your finances about these elemental human things. So I read it the way you're reading it, as very pointed about what life has been like in Babylon, what life, taken back to the manna text, like that was a critique of Pharaoh's economy. Like, this is the way human societies have tended to work, is we control basic access to basic needs. And then here you have the prophet saying, in God's economy, no, we're not. Right. You have always heard it this way. It is not going to be that way. We're going to do something else.
Yeah, and it is explicitly not that way.
Explicitly, yes.
Yeah. And I love that this verse that started with water ends with wine and milk. Like those seem more, I don't know, those are like the most desirable beverages depending on your mood,
Yes. Yeah.
or your age, or, the time of day, I don't know. But even those, we start with the most essential thing to live. And then, okay, you can also the ones that might bring you some joy or fill your tummy a bit more.
I love that, Amy. So it's like there's an amplification of like, okay, everybody gets their basic needs met. And then you also get your food. And then you also get these things that are luxuries a little bit, or at least like
just on the edge of, luxury or comfort, or sort of just on the edge of actual joy.
Make your life feel a little special. I like that a lot.
Okay, so if verse 1 was about finding satisfaction without having to buy anything, and a way to satisfy our needs and appetites that is freely given to us, verse 2 is kind of the reverse. It's asking us, why do you spend your money on things that don't satisfy you?
Yes.
How do you think about that switch? How do you understand the transition between those two verses?
The way that it is working in my head is actually, it's weird how often my head goes to Deuteronomy.
That is weird.
I don't know what this says about me.
It's like the online world desperately wants me to take these quizzes now as a middle-aged woman. That's like, what's your style archetype? You're wearing the wrong colors. Like this is your, whatnot. So your biblical archetype, surprisingly, is Deuteronomy.
Yes. I think that might be true. Yeah. The specifically where it's taking me is to Deuteronomy 15, which is that passage about debt cancellation. And then it says there will be no more poor among you as long as you obey this law that I'm giving you today. And so when we've come out of like everybody can have enough and everybody can enjoy their life a little bit, then there's this sort of connection in Deuteronomy between the material reality of that depends on the spiritual reality of actually being committed to living out of the commandments that God has given us about how to live our life together. And so here you get this move that's like, there's going to be plenty for everybody. Stop spending your money, in ways like stop using your resources for ridiculous things and use it for things that build up the community. And that means turning your heart toward God. That's kind of where my head's going with it. Do you have thoughts about that, or would you go somewhere else?
No, I love that. And I'm really glad you anchored us in Deuteronomy. Because where my mind went, just because I happen to be reading parts of this book right now, is the book Braiding Sweetgrass.
Oh, yeah.
Did you ever read that book? And there is a story in there about a legend of the Wendigo, which is a creature who consumes but is never satiated. The more he eats, the more voracious he becomes. And I wish that my culture, our culture had that legend in it, because I think it would be such an important, be like, hello, you're moving into that territory here.
Yes.
But I've been thinking about all these different places in our world and in my own life where consumption does not lead to satisfaction.
Yes.
It just makes you want to consume more and more and more. And in that book, in the context of that legend, part of it is about you have to feel yourself inside of a system of mutual care and concern and responsibility. Like that's what prevents you from going into Wendigo territory. And when you're outside that system, it's like your appetites get all haywire, and you don't. They don't lead you to the right things, and they don't bring you satisfaction. They're just destructive. And so I keep seeing that coming up in this chapter, and it'll come up a couple of more times in my mind. But yeah, that idea of being inside some kind of system of mutuality.
I really love that, Amy. What you're pointing out is that cross-culturally, this is just kind of the way humans are. Like we tend to get ourselves into places where we are voracious beyond what is reasonable. And it requires some kind of community to regulate us, some kind of care about the other, some kind of neighborliness. You're reminding me of Ecclesiastes too, of course. And that's a really beautiful connection that I think enriches a lot of reading of the biblical text for me.
Humans are so strange.
It's true. Often I'm saying the empire is terrible, which I mean often is true. Like we organize ourselves in ways, but you're pointing me to a little bit like it's a little bit in human nature. Like just left to our own devices, we kind of maybe tend to do that kind of thing, even if there's no empire like advertising to us all the time.
Yeah.
And so we actually need the counter voice is necessary to remind us to be part of a community and not an individual person.
Yeah, right. If we're disconnected from something bigger than ourselves, or from each other, or from a system, or from the divine, we fall off into that other territory.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then something happens in verse 3, Bobby, that for me feels really tied to the Hebrew. I'm just going to enjoy that we have this last reading in Hebrew here. But so we had back in verse 1 when it says, come to the water, come for the water, the chulamayim. And then here we have the hu elai, come to me.
Yes.
And then in the second verse, we had listen to me, shimu elai, and you will eat your nefesh, your, I don't know, spirit, life breath, however we want to describe that word.
I think of it as like life essence or something
your
like that.
Life essence.
It's a hard word to translate for sure.
Yes. Your nafshechem is the word, will enjoy good food. And here we have listen to me with the same verb. And that same word again, nafshechem, will be revived. So I feel like in the first two verses, there was sort of this intermediary of food and water, like come to the water, listen to me, and you will have food. And now we just have come to me, listen,
Yes.
and you will be revived. And that sort of intermediary of food has been, it maybe isn't needed anymore or has been taken out.
I love that, Amy. So we've gone from like, you can have a little water, to you can also have some bread, to you can also have wine and milk, to things don't satisfy. So come to me and you'll have a rich feast. Just come to me. So it's like coming to God is like it doesn't like, you don't skip all of those steps. Like you
have
need
to have
those
all this,
things.
but it seems to culminate
that's
like when
the
you get
ultimate
down to
good.
the end of the path. That's really
that so much.
Where it's going. Does it make you think that, I'm assuming the me here is God.
Yes.
Does it make you think, how is God like food and water? Or do you think we don't really need that step? It's more just that we're further down the
I like
pathway.
thinking of the idea of God as food and water in the sense that God is the like elemental need for what makes humans thrive.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you will hear that used as like what you really need is God and you don't need bread that much. And I'm not persuaded by that argument that like what people who are hungry on the street, what they really need is God.
Yeah.
And not bread.
Well, actually, they really are hungry. Yeah.
What I tend to work at it the other way, right? We need to feed them. And then, if they find their way to this kind of reality that will enrich their very life essence, like all to the better. And so I like the way this text moves, and I like the way you're pointing it out, that it starts with the elemental need or the fundamental human need of sustenance, and it culminates in this kind of like true vivification of the human spirit is found in connection with God, but not in place of those things, but as the culmination of those things. I love that a lot.
And then I feel like the language, I don't know. Well, I want to say it's a big shift, but you can fight me on that. We move to a covenant.
Yes.
And then we move to David.
Yes.
How do you understand that shift? Like before, it has felt very sort of, well, no, I'm just going to leave the question there.
It really is an interesting move in that verse. And it's sort of like, have a little bread and then come to me and then I will make a covenant with you. And so we have this renewal of the relationship. And, the idea of covenant is this mutual relationship of two subjects who are, it's not a domination relationship. It's we're in this thing together kind of relationship. And that seems like not only can you come into God's presence, but you can be in an ongoing committed relationship with God that you both are invested in and you both need. I think is really lovely. How does the second half of verse 3, the CEB has, I will make an everlasting covenant. How did the JPS read that?
Pretty similarly, I will make with you an everlasting covenant.
One of the things that was interesting to me in the Hebrew, it's ekratah, which is, it's a cohortative form. Let me make. Which to me really, it's like, come near to me and let me make a covenant with you. Like that, just that subtle little shift there feels to me like God really wants this covenant. And the problem is that we're a little reluctant, or we're not fully invested yet, or we haven't been able to lean our ears toward God in quite the right way just yet. And so it's, let me do this thing for you. And it's almost like God is, it's not that God needs the covenant, but it's like God's desire to be in the covenant is leading our desire to be in the covenant. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Do you do anything with that?
Yeah, I hadn't actually noticed the cohortative, but I love that you pointed it out. It's making me think, all of this covenant language is making me think back to our discussion just a moment earlier about the ways that our appetites get out of control and sort of misguided when we are outside of relationship and outside of system.
Yes.
And establishing a covenant is one way to very clearly like put yourself, at least in this one relationship, like leolam, like the forever. This is a way to root yourself that maybe has been absent before.
Yes. The reference to David that you're pointing to, like, I struggled with this for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
I will make with you an everlasting covenant, my faithful loyalty to David.
Mm-hmm.
A quick reading of that might land you with this is about the reestablishment of the Davidic kingship.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you really are wrestling with it, that's not what it says. I think what it says is I'm going to make with the people the kind of covenant I made with David.
Mm-hmm.
And so you remember back in 2 Samuel 7, God says to David, I'm going to establish your throne forever and ever in Jerusalem. And now what I think is happening is God is saying, okay, same covenant, but it no longer has to go through David. So I'm going to establish you forever and ever. And it leaves the Davidic monarchy, maybe the monarchy just in general, off to the side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really wondered what to do with this you.
Yes.
That was coming up here. Because in the very beginning, it doesn't say you, but it's spoken, in the imperative. I don't know, like there's an imagined you, come all who are hungry. And then it has this you in verse 3 that, as you're saying, it didn't press me all the way yet to think we need to be talking about an individual you. But for me, it pressed yet further in verse 5. So you shall summon a nation you did not know, and a nation that did not know you shall come running to you. Then I really started to be like, wait, who?
Because now it is singular, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Now it's singular.
In verse 3, it's still plural.
And that's right. In verse 3, it's plural. Mm-hmm.
One way to read that is that up until verse 3, the people are a bunch of individual people because they are not in covenant and they have been having to pay for their food and they haven't been in rightly ordered relationship with each other or with God. But now that we have mentioned in verse 3 that let me make a covenant with you, now the people are a people. And now you can address them together as a singular.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Maybe.
I started to wonder something kind of similar, although I came at it in a slightly different way. I don't know that I would argue that this is really what the author had in mind, but it is very powerful to me to think about it as you, Bobby, who have felt so alone and cut out of this system, shall summon a nation you did not know, and a nation that did not know you shall come running to you. Like you will be part of this system, this community of mutual care for the sake of the eternal your God. Like there is this, sort of running across the field kind of imagery. I like that image. I don't know if I think that's what Isaiah was going for, but
I like that, Amy. And it takes, so like your reading and my reading together are sort of like we have now all become a collective that can be addressed as a singular. That's where I landed.
Yes, right. I just got there a little later.
Well, where you land is different though. But in a really lovely way, which is like within the collective, you, individual person, Amy Robertson, you still matter.
Yes, but you are coming back together into the collective.
Yes. You matter now as part of the collective. It's not that you've been like subsumed into the board.
No, it's like the opposite of that. It's like because you are part of the collective, you will feel you are valued differently.
Yes, I love that. One other thing that I really love in this section is sometimes in prophecies, as you know, like when you call a nation, they end up working for you. And so like when the Isaiah says, look, you'll call a nation you don't know and it will run to you. I was like, oh no, we're going to put him to work. But here we don't.
And it will polish your shoes.
Here it's just, they're going to run to you because the Lord has glorified you so profoundly. Like you're just going to be so, like people are going to want to know more about that. And they're going to run to you and they're going to be drawn to you. And maybe they're going to want to learn from you or become part of you or be drawn to the God that has made you this way or something. But it's not a utilitarian, the nations are going to come to you. It's just like the profoundness of this transformation is going to attract people from all over to want to be near you.
People will see what's possible.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Terry Peterson, minister of St. John's Church of Scotland in Gourock, west of Glasgow on the Scottish coast. And I am the liturgy writer for Bible Worm, which means I get to spend a lot of time listening to Bobby and Amy, and that is a great joy. It is fascinating to hear them read and talk through stories I thought I knew pretty well, since I'm starting my third time through the narrative lectionary now. I always come away with more ideas than I can fit into a liturgy or a sermon, and working with them has deepened my own spiritual life as I write liturgy that follows the contours of their conversations. I appreciate that they don't shy away from the difficult parts, and that they always find connections between these ancient texts and our contemporary life. And it's fun for me to work those connections into liturgy that empowers worshiping communities to speak to and about God in new ways. If you join the Bible Worm Patreon at the Liturgy Worm level or higher, you'll have access to those liturgies and prayers that you can use or adapt, as well as early access to the podcast. Or there are other levels with different benefits, including Bible studies, access to the Bible Worm Collaborative discussion group, and more. Visit patreon.com/BibleWormPodcast to help Bobby and Amy continue creating this incredible resource for people of faith around the world. And now back to this week's podcast.
All right. Are we ready to move on?
Let's do.
Okay. I'm picking up in verse 6. Seek God while you can. Call out while God is near. Let the wicked give up their ways, the sinful their plans. Let each one turn back to God so as to be pardoned, to our God who freely forgives. For my plans are not your plans, nor are my ways your ways, declares God. But as the heavens are high above the earth, so are my ways high above your ways, and my plans above your plans. Bobby, I really expected verse 6 to be, seek and you shall find.
Yes.
Which it sort of is, but with a limited time offer.
Yes. Seek the Lord while he is findable.
Yeah. How does that change things?
I don't know, Amy. Like, I mean, the two options that I can see. One is that God is a little flighty and like comes near sometimes and then goes away to do other things sometimes. And so here's a moment where God's paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
The other is just the flip of that, which is that we are a little flighty, and that there's moments in our life as individuals or in our life as a community where we actually are open to finding God. I find that reading has more energy for me.
Yeah.
And especially in this moment when you're thinking about the exile, like, you know, part of the problem back in Jeremiah, say, was that the people had gotten so comfortable in the land that their priorities were elsewhere, sort of like the beginning of this passage. And they just weren't able, at least the elites of the people were not able to turn their hearts toward God. They just couldn't do it because they were distracted by other things. And now all of that has gone away, and now we've got to rebuild from sort of nothing. And maybe here's a moment. It might remind us a little bit of the wilderness, the manna text that we were talking about, where the people had to turn their backs on Egypt and look toward the wilderness in order to find God. Like, there's the glory of the Lord. You could read this a little bit that way. Here we have a moment where God is actually available to you, and you are actually in a position where your spirit is open to encountering God. So like, let's do it now.
Let's do it now. Yeah. Walk through the door. Yeah, no, I really like that. It's, I almost picture these sort of cycles of moving closer and farther away. And you can imagine God is the one who's moving, or humans who are the
Yes.
ones that are moving, or both of them are moving, whatever. I didn't mean to just whatever, a big theological question, but I kind of did.
Yada, yada, the most important part.
yeah, I did. But there is something special about this moment that is not going to be here forever.
Yes.
I mean, the urgency is, on the one hand, like a little bit scary, because I want it to say, like, God will be here any old time of the day or night to do whatever you want. Although you're saying, I think quite rightly, that we might not just be talking about what God is doing or not doing at any given time. But I really like, I think that it presses us to make a decision. Like, instead of, well, I'm going to see how my other plans work out, and if they fail, this will be my backup plan. This is sort of like, God is not your backup plan. God should be your plan.
I mean, the way that you're saying that is just reminding me of Jeremiah 29. And remember in that text, Jeremiah is writing sort of 70 years before the end of the exile. And basically what his letter says is there's going to be a while, y'all, where God is not going to pay attention to us. But when Babylon's 70 years are up, then God says, I will come, I will listen. When you search for me, you will find.
Yeah.
And so there really is a sense, I appreciate your pressing me on this. There really is a sense in which God has, at least in the theology of Jeremiah, withdrawn from the people and sort of let them suffer the consequences of their own actions. And then the promise is God's going to come back and listen again. And here we are. Like this is that moment where God is back and ready and available.
I love that connection and the way that it draws out what was happening in Jeremiah, that it sort of is, God's going to be absent for a while. So go do the best you can. Go live in the world.
Right.
Go be where you are. Go plant a garden. Kind of bide your time.
Yes.
And live your life.
Yes.
But now we are coming into a different time.
Yes.
It's not that every time is the same as every other time. Something else is being asked of you here. And something else is possible here.
Yes.
I love thinking in verse 7 about what exactly are the ways and plans of the wicked and sinful. But before I get to that, I'm just having such a love affair with the Hebrew this week because it's the last time I'll get to be in the Hebrew.
It's also
for a
beautiful
little while.
Hebrew. Yes.
It is also really beautiful Hebrew. But another, less poetic, but more, I don't know, concrete or something like that way to translate these words are what's translated here as their ways are like their paths.
Yes.
And what's translated as their plans, I would have translated as thoughts.
Yes.
And the reason that I like digging into it at that level is I feel like pulling back the translation to that more sort of crass one is helping me see the levels here. Like people, I don't know, I think I would see ways and plans. I would just kind of blur that all into one category, like they're going to do their thing. But now I'm really thinking that like your thoughts and your paths there are different steps along the way. You know what I'm saying? Like that you can have a thought and not act on it. And then it can turn into a path or like a habit that you really are following in the world. But this is asking us to pull back both of them. Do you think there's fruit in that distinguishment?
I really love the way you're thinking about ways as paths. Because like ways can just mean like the kind of the way I do things is different than the way you do things. Mm-hmm. But here it's if you read it as ways, which is, I mean, you're right, is like literally the Hebrew there. There is a path that the wicked are on. There are like constraints that they have to their way of being in the world. And God offers a different path. And so get off of that path, like get off at the next exit, like do a U-turn and head back, on the God path. I like that. Then it's not like the stuff God does is different than the stuff you do. You've got a choice about whose path you're on. You are currently on the path of the wicked. So you could do something different than that.
Yeah. That's a nice connection to that, also to the turn back to God, like a literal turn.
Yes.
Turn back, turn to the other path.
Yeah. The word there that you're translating as thoughts, machshavot.
Machshavot, yeah.
I appreciate your drawing attention to that and the way that you're doing it. The way that the CEB has handled that is in verse 7, they translate that the sinful and their schemes. But then when they translate it in verse 8, it's my plans aren't your plans. And so it's like when it's attributed to wicked people, it's schemy, but when it's attributed to God, it's plans. And you lose the parallelism. And so holding the parallel there and thinking about whatever is being said of the sinful in verse 7 is also being said of God in verse 8. So my plans, my thoughts.
Yeah, I certainly see what the CEB is trying to do, but if you call it schemes, then I'm not going to say, well, I don't have schemes.
Right. Yeah.
I do have thoughts.
Yeah. I've always worried a little bit about the translation of machshavot as thoughts because it seems a little flighty to me, and the idea, but maybe that's the way it is. I like the CEBs when they get to plans because the plans that you have for yourself are not like my plans that I have for you. It's not just like you don't know what's going on in my head, which is sometimes the way that's understood.
I can see that. It's a little more actualized when it's a plan in your head, and then yet more actualized when it's a path that you're following.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I have a plan for you, God says. You have a plan for yourself, but it's not a good one.
Yeah.
I have a plan for you that is so much better than that. So come, see what my plan's going to be. That's how I want to read that.
Yeah. So you're taking us into verse 8, which is just, it's hard to capture, I think, in the English, that the parallelism of the way that this verse is put together. Ki lo machshavotai machshavotechem v'lo darchechem darachai. The sort of my plans are not your plans, and your paths are not my paths. Which I think then, for me, pushes me back again a little bit into verse 6, which is, you have to choose one or the other.
Yes.
You are being asked, this is not wishy-washy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was also where we started out in verse 1, right? Maybe, without money, you can have this stuff. There's also a choice about how you're going to arrange. So all the way through, we've been kind of looking at this, you've got to make a commitment somewhere here.
And then I like this. The heavens are high above the earth. My ways are high above your ways. My plans above your plans. Do you just see that as a way of saying better?
I do.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. On the scale of plan goodness, mine is so far above yours that you can't even see it down there.
You can't even see it. Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's this kind of God is in heaven and you are on earth. Therefore, let your words be few, to quote Ecclesiastes, right? You don't know what's going on. It's about God's inaccessibility. Or at least that's one way you can take it.
Yeah.
And I want to take it exactly the opposite of that God is so grounded and has such a plan, such a way, and it's so much better than the one you got for yourself. You can't even imagine a way that's as good as the one God is giving you.
Yeah.
That's the way I want to think about it.
I love that. It has me thinking too about above here as being sort of zoomed out. My plans are for a people and for the earth and for this system of mutual care. And that is so much better for you, the individual, to be in that bigger system. You can't bootstrap your way through this. But it's hard to see that just from right where you are because you don't have that perspective.
I love that so much, Amy. And it was reminding me just of, oftentimes when we talk, everything we talk about, not everything, but many things we talk about in today's culture is about how we don't have any kind of long-term perspective, past or future. And so we make products that are going to break 3 years from now. So people have to buy another one. And we do all of these things that are about how do I take care of me and mine right now?
Yeah.
And this sort of myopia. And then when you think about it, there is this not just in space, but also in time, there is a bigness to what God can see. We're going to want to take care of the current moment, but God's got a bigger picture. I love that.
Yeah. All right. Are we ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. I'm going to pick us up in verse 10. For as the rain or snow drops from heaven and returns not there, but soaks the earth and makes it bring forth vegetation, yielding seed for sowing and bread for eating, so is the word that issues from my mouth. It does not come back to me unfulfilled, but performs what I purpose, achieves what I sent it to do. Yea, you shall leave in joy and be led home secure. Before you, mount and hill shall shout aloud, and all the trees of the field shall clap their hands. Instead of a briar, a cypress shall rise. Instead of a nettle, a myrtle shall rise. These shall stand as a testimony to God, an everlasting sign that shall not perish. Well, the above here gets concrete for a moment with the rain and snow coming from above. And I just love this image so much of them falling from above and soaking the earth, and it can only move one way.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know, the inclusion of snow in the Middle East or in Atlanta makes it seem especially magical. But it's like this visible connection between the realm of the sky and the realm of the earth.
I love that, Amy. And we started out this passage talking about water, and now here we have water again in a way that is producing life. And so we're connecting the sort of spiritual and physical worlds in this really, really compelling way.
Yes. No, exactly. We started with the image of water and with the need for food. And here we have water falling from heaven and vegetation growing in order to be. It doesn't just say plants will grow. It says seed for sowing and bread for eating.
Yes.
Does the circling back add something for you? I mean, it's poetically beautiful. Is having a touchdown back in the world of the needs of our, I don't know, the more embodied worlds, does that add something for you?
I think that metaphor is trying to point forward to verse 11, right? It's trying to explain the way the word works in the world. But I really love the way it points back to verse 1. I'm not sure if the poet wants me to be reading it that way or not. But to say, like, there is water that is freely given that produces food for you to eat, and then there's milk and there is vine. And now we find that the water has its source in heaven, and that it is God then who is the provider of that, and it freely grows in the world. And like, why should it have a price when this is God's rain on God's earth, growing God's seeds? And so I like reading it back in that direction, even as it's wanting to point us forward as well.
Yes. Oh, no, I love that point. It certainly is pointing us forward and maybe giving us a foothold in a world that we know well, and then saying it's going to be, maybe this one's a little, well, it's not a little more metaphorical, because rain does actually make plants grow. I've learned that in my years, my years on this earth.
Yeah.
So now the word of God is like the rain. And it will soak into the earth, and it will have an effect.
Yes.
And it sounds like that effect is for the exiled people to return home safely?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what it seems like.
Yes. Okay, good. But the natural world is not quiet about that. And I wonder how this image of the hills shouting and the trees clapping plays into this for you.
Yeah, that verb in verse 12, you will go out. It's yatsa, which is, the word that you would use to say that. But it is also a word that is used to talk about the escape from Egypt, the going out of the people, and that God will bring you out. And so, I think that this is in this case, it is specific to you will go out from the exile and you will be replanted in your home and you will grow. And it's recalling that, it's connecting it to Exodus. And then we can extrapolate from there to all your goings out and all of your escape from the things that are holding you back, or the systems that are making you pay for bread. I love that image of the natural world. Like, we get this every once in a while in different ways in the biblical text, both in the Hebrew scriptures and in the New Testament, of creation itself responding to God's actions in the world. We even talked about it in Genesis 1 this year, I think, where there are holy seasons before there are people. And so like creation itself is somehow keeping holy time. So I love that, both that God's action evokes a response, but also that like nature's on team Israel's coming out of exile, right? Like they're like, yeah, it's time. Way to go, guys. That image is so beautiful. What do you do with that, Amy?
I mean, I think all those things. And it draws me again to this sense that, we're not alone here. And not only are you not alone, but you're not alone in your relationship with God. It's not singular. You're also part of a human community. And there's also a natural community. Like there is a community of trees and hills that we can feel part of in the world. Just like we would celebrate when rain or snow helps vegetation grow because our well-being is tied into the well-being of the plants.
Yes.
In some way the natural world is celebrating God's success and maybe our well-being also. It's making me think back to the Elijah story that we read, the still small voice story, where Elijah keeps saying, I'm the only one. I'm the only one fighting for you, God. And he's not the only one.
Right.
Things didn't go exactly as he wanted, but he just can't see that he's not alone. Yeah.
I love that. You were also reminding me, we did that series a couple of years ago on creation and stewardship of creation. And I kind of wish we had had this passage in there, although we were trying to avoid passages that are in the narrative lectionary. But it is such a, like you were talking before about God's plans are bigger for our thriving. And here we have like when the people are following God's big picture plan, creation celebrates. When we're following this, like I will charge you for food.
Yes.
Now nature has become subjected to our commerce.
Yes.
And our like desire to make money, and nature suffers.
Yeah.
And so, this could be nature is rejoicing for us or for the people because they've made it out of the exile, but also nature rejoicing because now if the people are following God, they're not going to be about exploiting nature for gain, but they're going to be about properly tending to the creation.
Yeah, right. A real mutuality.
Yeah. So it's good for the trees too.
Yes.
When we follow God's ways.
Yes, that's right. Bobby, I am remembering that in some New Testament text that referred to the mustard seed, the mustard plant.
Oh, yeah. Look at you.
I know. You particularly appreciate that the mustard plant is not like a big grand tree.
Yeah, it's like it's a nice sized shrub.
It's a little shrub, yes. And so then when I read this last verse here, verse 13, I wondered what you thought about it, because it does have, instead of a briar, a cypress shall rise. Instead of a nettle, a myrtle shall rise.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, and maybe you weren't thinking about that at all and I just ruined the verse for you, but I don't know. How do you read this verse?
You're not going to like this, Amy.
Yeah, I'm ready.
You had such high hopes for me. My thought was, man, Isaiah, you should have ended in verse 12. It's like, sometimes you do that thing where you land your point and then you don't realize you landed. I do this all the time. I might be doing it right now. And then I make the point again and you're like,
I should have stopped. I should have quit while I was ahead. Mm-hmm.
I will say that, the myrtle, what that draws my mind to is the crepe myrtle, which grows in the southern part of the United States, which is a really beautiful plant. And my grandmother loved crepe myrtles. And so it has a special place in my heart. And so I like that image of, instead of briars, there's no myrtles growing. I will say that I don't really have a place to land this metaphor. Can you help me make something out of it?
I mean, I think it is a good thing for us to not only lift up the most grand of trees as our specimens here, but it is true that briars and nettles both sting, or,
Yeah.
they're hard for humans. They might be good for, what they for sure have their purpose in the ecosystem. I don't know. I'm thinking about this. I can't remember if I already told you this, Bobby. It's something that a 11-year-old said at synagogue a few weeks ago that I literally have been thinking about for, I don't know, a month and a half now. The question on the table, we always have a little bit of Torah discussion during our services, and the question on the table was, how is a human like a tree? Because of a verse in Deuteronomy. And the boy said, because a tree connects heaven and earth. It draws the earth up and it draws the heaven down. And I've just been thinking about that for 2.5 months now.
Yeah.
But if we want to lean into that sort of metaphor a little bit, there is a way that there's a sense that these big grand trees kind of, they can reach up higher and collect the water and the sun first and draw it down into its roots in the earth and draw sap up through there is this sort of connective body in the trunk of a tree that reminds me a little bit of this idea of like the rain and the snow will fall from heaven and will have an effect on the earth, and the earth sort of like reaches back up towards heaven. And I don't know, I could see them as a connective tissue.
Yeah, I love that idea. That's really lovely. The other thing that I was thinking about is like my encounter with cypress trees is from when I was a Boy Scout back in the day, and we would go canoeing in the Okefenokee Swamp in southern Georgia, and there's cypress trees everywhere because they are they don't rot in water. So I just like the specificity of cypress is interesting to me here, and I guess I don't know the resonance of cypress in ancient Israel, but we've had a whole text about abundant water, and so like there's one of the ways of maybe reading that is that there's going to be such abundant water that the cypress is going to be the tree that grows because there's so much water all around. The myrtle tree, I think, never loses its leaves. And so it's sometimes thought of as a symbol of like unending life or something like that. And so maybe that has a resonance there. I don't know how much I want to hang my hat on either of those interpretations.
No, but I think that is the right question to be asking, and I just don't know enough about these trees to be able to offer it. But I love that question. What are the characteristics of these trees in particular that the author might want to draw in here?
We need an arborist. We should have a Bible worm arborist.
We should have a guest arborist.
That would be amazing. Actually, I would love that.
Yeah. We will take write-in nominations for our guest arborist. Bobby, this is just a beautiful chapter.
It is a beautiful chapter.
Has a lot of images that feel real and grounded and also hopeful and encouraging. What is rising up for you at the end of this chapter? And for the third week of Advent, when this text will be read in church communities.
Yeah. To me, sometimes people give the narrative lectionary a hard time because they don't want to read these texts during Advent, but I just think this is such a beautiful Advent text.
Yeah.
And it's not the traditional Advent text, but like here we are, like the theme of Advent is we are moving through a time of darkness, but the light shines in the darkness and the darkness has not overcome it. And here we have a text we've been in the exile, but look, the exile is coming to an end and you can see what's coming, y'all. So beautiful. I am resonating with this verse that honestly, I mostly have disliked in my life, but you have helped me with it, which is verse 8. The CEB, my plans are not your plans, and my ways are not your ways, says the Lord. And where you have helped me to get is that this is not about God's transcendent inaccessibility, but it's precisely about how much better God's vision of how we could live together is than anything that we are able to come up with on our own. And you see it all the way back at the very beginning of this text when the prophet has to say, you can have water with no money. Like you can eat even if you have nothing in your pocket.
Mm-hmm.
You could even enjoy yourself a little bit and it would be okay. You know? And like, that's our plans. That's our ways. That's us structuring the world around profit and the ways in which that creates all kinds of destruction. It destroys the community, the fabric that holds us together, the thriving of the lives of people who don't have money in their pockets. I'm reading these trees clapping at the end as sort of like, oh, thank God we're not living in a society that's driven by exploitation of the environment in favor of profit. And like all people and all creatures are just responding in this, yes, God's ways are better. Like, let's do that. And so that I feel it very inspiring to say there is a way that things get better from here. And we have created a world in which money is a barrier to many people's thriving all over the world and here in Arkansas where I live. And there's a different way to do it. And God is inviting us into that way and wishing to make a covenant with us. Please, please let me make a covenant with you and we'll do this thing a different way. And so I find that really hopeful and really inspiring, on a basic level about like the world could be better than it is, y'all. Like there is a light that is breaking. There is an end to the exile in which we have found ourselves, but also the specificity of it, that there is a way of life that leads us to mutual thriving and that God wants to be with us in that way. And so, there is a turning around that has to be done, a teshuvah, but it is possible, and we are invited that way, and God is willing to show us, and maybe even has shown us what that way might be. I think if you want to connect this to Advent strongly, you would say that Jesus, who is coming into the world in a week, has lived out that way. The way that I tend to read Jesus is that he is a living example of how one should live out the way of God that is given in the Torah. He has other things maybe as well, but he is certainly that. And so this Jesus that we're looking forward to at the end of Advent shows us what it would be like to live that way. And so this is pointing us forward to the Christ event. That story ends with him being crucified. Spoiler alert, because the world can't handle people living that way.
Yeah.
But we don't have to talk about that in the third Sunday of Advent. We can just talk about a different way as possible. What about you, Amy? What are you seeing in this most beautiful and the last of the Hebrew Scriptures text for this year?
It's not so different than what you're seeing, Bobby. And I think I even want to take it a step further, that even for the people within the economic systems of our world, of the empire, that have the means and can buy their food and can get the water they need, this text is pressing me towards, even for you, you will be better off if you let go of that and put yourself inside this God system, like God's vision for how this system should work. And it's a scary thing to do.
Yes.
It takes a ridiculous amount of trust that probably we don't really have in each other. So maybe we can have in God. But this text is really saying you have to choose.
Yes.
You can't have your way and God's way at the same time.
Yes.
And I've been thinking a lot about what are incremental ways in my own life that I can move more towards this like realization of real mutual dependence with my community. And some of them feel really hard and some of them feel natural and great. But it takes a lot of trust to not just do each individual thing in whatever way seems quickest or most efficient or cheapest or most convenient, or it brings me pleasure in this moment or something like that. It takes trust, or dare I say faith, to believe that it is worth creating that bigger system. But I think it is that bigger system. It is, dare I say, only that bigger system, those kinds of relationships that can prevent us from constantly seeking out things that are not going to satisfy us. And really building a world where it's hard to feel a sense of meaning and what is meaningful about our, I don't know. I feel like it makes everything very convenient and also saps it of meaning. And that's if you're lucky and you have the economic means, then you get the convenience, but maybe not so much of the meaning.
Yeah. I love that, Amy, and I so much appreciate your reminding us that idea of God's ways above our ways, not only meaning so much better than ours, but also like the picture in God's view extends in time and space in ways that we have trouble inhabiting. And so that immediate anxiety or the immediate convenience that often motivates me is bigger than that.
Yeah.
You were reminding me of my friend Tom out in California texted me just a couple of days ago asking me about the Church of the Savior, which was this community that Gordon Cosby founded in Washington, D.C. Maybe like in the 80s or the 70s, that's still around in some form today. But that community, to me, was the closest maybe that I have ever heard about to what you were talking about, where they actually, like, they were members of that community that were, like really fancy lawyers and people that were homeless. And what they all did was show each other their financial statements, and they would put 10%, the Christian tithe, into the community, and they had to do it. And then they took care of each other's needs first. So if you were homeless and you made $2,000 last year, then you put $200 in, and then the community would make sure you had a place to live and food to eat and all of these things. And then the money that they had left after they took care of their own needs, they founded these nonprofits that gave back to the community in some kind of way.
Wow.
And it's just really beautiful. Like I've always aspired to do something like that, and but it seems too hard because my plans are too small.
Yeah.
But there are ways that we could imagine of doing that kind of thing in the world.
That's super cool. I love that. I love seeing people try to actualize these things in the world.
Yeah. Me too.
Bobby, next week, as you mentioned at the beginning, we move on to the book of John, chapter 1, verses 1 to 18. I think there's a word in there too. Okay, I'll say that differently.
There's like 100 of them.
I knew reading this chapter that we would be moving on to John. And so when we got in verse 11 to, the comparison between the rain falling from heaven
and
to
the word
coming down from heaven, I was like, I know there's going to be a word.
In the beginning was the word. Yes, that is where we pick up next time.
Well, this has been a lovely reading through of Hebrew scripture with you today and for the whole first half of this season.
It has been.
I look forward to seeing what John might have to say to us this year.
Sounds good, Amy. I'll see you next time.
I'm looking forward to it. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of Bible Worm. If you've enjoyed this free podcast, we hope you'll help us to keep it going by joining our Patreon for as little as $4 per month. You can also sign up for other goodies like early access, video lectures, weekly liturgies, and more. Visit patreon.com/BibleWormPodcast for details.
Bible Worm is produced and edited by Bobby Williamson. Our theme song is sung by Colin Bagby, and our theme music is The World at Large by Dano Songs. Many thanks to all our Patreon supporters for helping us make this podcast possible.
Join us again next time when we begin reading the Gospel of John with chapter 1, verse 1. Until then, keep on digging.